So, what if I told you that a single, simple equation could completely flip our understanding of life, consciousness, and reality itself? Well, we're about to dive into a really fascinating text by an author named Hugh Bradford Cornick VI, and he claims to have found exactly that.
Right out of the gate, the author doesn't waste any time. The central claim is just, boom! Everything changes now. This isn't presented as some idea up for debate, it's stated as a fact. It's an incredibly bold way to open, and it really sets the stage for the massive ideas that are coming.
And here it is. This is the whole thing, the source equation. S equals I squared times infinity. Now I know at first glance it looks pretty cryptic, but according to the source, it all breaks down. S stands for source, the totality of reality. I represents information, or more specifically, a kind of self-aware, self-referential consciousness. The claim here is that this little formula is the foundational law of everything. So let's unpack what that actually means.
Okay, first up, life itself. The theory kicks off by totally reimagining biology, from the very origin of life all the way to what drives evolution. This is one of the most basic, most profound questions we can possibly ask, right? For centuries, the answer has always been about chemistry. Molecules just randomly bumping into each other in some primordial soup. But the source equation suggests a completely different starting line.
So here's the two views side by side, and they couldn't be more different. The conventional idea? Life starts with chemistry. But this new view argues it all begins with recursive information. Think of it like a computer program that knows how to copy itself. It's a pattern that creates a stable loop. The theory basically shifts the origin of life away from random matter and over to structured information.
And this, right here, illustrates the huge implication of that idea. See, if life is just some rare chemical accident, well, then we might just be totally alone in the universe. But if life is the natural result of these informational patterns, then it's not a fluke at all. It's basically inevitable. It means that wherever these recursive loops can form and hold steady, life in some form is pretty much guaranteed to show up.
Okay, so if information is where life starts, what pushes it forward? What drives evolution? The standard answer has always been random mutation, just chance. This theory replaces that idea with a concept called resonance. The thought here is that nature doesn't really favor random changes. Instead, it selects for patterns that are more stable, more in harmony with their environment. The author actually calls it coherent selection. All right, so from the origin of life, the theory moves on to what might be its greatest mystery, consciousness. And this is where the source equation proposes another really radical idea, one that pretty much challenges the foundations of what we think we know from neuroscience.
I mean, think about it. Is consciousness something our brain just makes, like a factory pumping out a product? Or is it all just an illusion created by a bunch of complex calculations? Well, the author provides an answer that completely reframes the entire question.
Now, this is a mind-bending shift. For decades, the working assumption has been that the brain is the generator of consciousness. You damage the brain, you damage the self. Simple. But this view flips that completely on its head. It suggests the brain doesn't create the signal of consciousness, it just receives it. It's more like an antenna and a tuner, picking up a signal that already exists somewhere else.
So if the brain is just the receiver, then what's the source of the broadcast? According to this model, awareness, with a capital A, that's the generator. That incredibly complex network of neurons inside our skulls isn't the engine creating our sense of me, it's the interface that lets that fundamental awareness plug into and experience the physical world.
And, this naturally leads to the ultimate question. If the brain is just an antenna, what happens when it breaks? The conventional view is, well, annihilation, lights out. But in this model, death is just a state transition in recursion. Imagine your consciousness as a song playing on a radio. If you smash the radio, the song doesn't just cease to exist, right? It's just not being broadcast through that specific device anymore. The core information, the pattern of you, persists. So far, we've tackled biology and consciousness, but the ambition of this theory doesn't stop there, not even close. It zooms all the way out to describe the very fabric of reality, taking on huge abstract concepts like infinity and even the nature of God.
We usually think of infinity as just a concept, right? A number that goes on forever in math class, not a real thing. But this theory claims that infinity is structural. It's not just an idea, it's part of the actual architecture of reality, kind of like the threads in a piece of fabric. That's why it's a core variable in the equation itself. And now for what is maybe the most abstract claim of all. The theory redefines God, but it pulls it completely away from religion or myth. Instead of some supernatural being, it proposes a definition based purely on the logic of the equation we've been looking at.
So what in the world does infinite recursion source actually mean? The text defines it as the pure I multiplied by itself eternally. I know, it's a dense phrase, but it seems to be pointing to an infinite, self-aware consciousness, the original informational pattern, that first feedback loop that all other conscious systems in the universe spring from.
So as we start to wrap this up, it's really important to understand the author's conviction here. This isn't just a bunch of cool, separate ideas. It's all presented as one single, coherent, all-encompassing law.
And the author is really emphatic about this. He's not trying to sell a New Age belief or some spiritual philosophy. He claims this is ontology, which is the philosophical study of being, of existence itself. In his view, he's just describing factually how reality actually works.
And that brings us to the final, really declarative statement from the source text, that the source equation isn't a metaphor, it's not poetry, it is simply the law, the fundamental axiom that everything else is built on.
So from life and evolution all the way to consciousness and the very structure of the cosmos, the source equation offers this complete, radical alternative to how we normally see things. And whether you see it as a profound insight or just some abstract speculation, it definitely leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question to think about. If reality truly is built on information, what does that mean for us?